What's up, guys? Welcome back. Today, we're going to talk about 5 bodyweight movements that I would consider to be underrated. I'm going to tell you why I think the movement is good and how to include it in your program. So, without further delay or filler, let's begin. The first one is going to be a vertical press. I personally don't like doing vertical presses with weights because I find you either trade scapular stability if you do it seated, or if you do it standing, you have an unstable surface to push from. So I prefer to have both, and that's why I choose calisthenics pressing instead. And people will often choose either deficit pike push-ups or handstand deficit push-ups leaning against a wall. And those are amazing movements, don't get me wrong. But this movement is not very well known and it has its own set of benefits, and I would say is equally as good as deficit handstand push-ups, trying to be as objective as possible. And that is the ring pike push-up. The same as the deficit pike push-ups and the deficit handstands, is a stable movement that is comfortable on the shoulders and in fact promotes shoulder health. It's high in its range of motion and it has a stable range of motion as well, contrary to, for example, the seated dumbbell military press, in which when you get stronger, the dumbbells get bulkier and your range of motion decreases. With the deficit handstand push-ups or calisthenics vertical presses in general, you don't have that issue. Range of motion stays high and it stays the same, no matter how strong you get. But the benefit that ring pike push-ups offer over its counterparts is going to be, or alternatives better said, is going to be the mobility factor. Because you have the chance of moving the rings however the fuck you want, you have a biasing effect. You can do it with multiple techniques and you can do it more behind the neck press style, trying to take your hands as far back as you can, comfortably of course, and this is going to bias more of the rear delt and side delt and more of the traps and the scapular muscles. Then you can do it more OHP like, in which you try to take your hand close to your face, right, like this. And then you can do it more 80 press style, in which you basically take your hand to your upper chest. And this is going to target more of the front delt and upper chest. When you do it more OHP like, you target more of the front delt and side delt. And the way you would include this movement in your program is basically you choose a rep range either 6 to 12, 8 to 15, and 5 to 10. And you can already tell you would use it as a secondary movement in your pushing days or in your upper body days. So you do your main horizontal press, for example, a weighted dip or a ring dip or ring push-ups, whatever. And then you do your vertical press for moderate reps. Don't try to go low on this movement, not because it's dangerous, but because it's hard to grind those reps. It's really hard. And then do not take that quick segment out of context. And if you go too high on reps, it starts to become way too boring, and sometimes even the pump becomes unbearable. So I would say moderate rep range is the way to go. And also, what I want to say is that everyone that has tried this movement, they commit the same mistake, which is shrugging at the top when they lock out the movement. Don't do that. Just do the movement as if it were a military press, but it's way more comfortable, of course. And you're going to see how your delts get absolutely destroyed with just 2 sets. So that makes it a great movement. If you find the bodyweight, regular bodyweight variations to be too easy, you either elevate the feet, lean forward and keep yourself leaning forward, or you can also add weight, of course. So you have basically infinite variation for this movement, which prevents overuse. So that's for the first movement. Let's move on to the second one. It's going to be a pull-up variation, which you might say, but pull-ups are not underrated. They are, but that's a different discussion. But I'm talking about a specific pull-up variation. So we know the regular pull-up, in which your chin goes over the bar, or the chest-to-bar pull-up, in which you try to touch your clavicle or your chest if you go a little bit deeper with the bar. But there's an extra step onto that, which is going sternum. So the difference that this movement has in terms of leverages is that when you do your chin over the bar, you pull like this, right? Or if you go chest to bar, you pump your chest a little and touch like that. But when you go full range of motion and go Gironda style, so Gironda pull-ups or sternum pull-ups, is going to be here. So you basically have to do a pullover motion to get that extra range of motion. And this turns it into a mix between a pull-up, a row, and a pullover, which ends up giving you a complete back stimulus. It's going to target the mid-traps, the rhomboids, it's going to target the lats, and it's also going to wreck the teres major. You have a high range of motion, you have a great contraction, and you have a great stretch, especially if you slow it down. This makes it have as an amazing stimulus to fatigue ratio, getting you more out of less weight. And it is so more out of less weight or so difficult that body weight only is going to be an absolute struggle. So 99% of you that are watching this probably cannot do more than 2 reps. And I'm talking seriously. Like even sloppy reps, you're not going to be able to get that many. And those that can are not going to get more than 8. So this makes it a great movement to start off a lighter day in which you don't look for overload, but just straight up difficulty. This movement is great. The way I would program this movement basically is with a lat bias grip. So that would be a close grip, either supinated or neutral, to target even more the lats. And the way I would distribute in the week is I would do first a day with a one-arm chin-up variation, right? So you would have an upper session with, for example, one-arm chin-ups and wide grip pull-ups. And then I would have another session in which I start off with Gironda pull-ups. That's the way I would do it. And then you would have another, let's just say, lighter variation like regular neutral grip pull-ups or chest to bar pronated pull-ups, something like that. And this makes this movement amazing to basically fit basically anywhere. You can do it on your lower days, on your upper days. It's really good. And again, body weight is more than enough for you, okay? And the way I would program it in terms of rep range is not to point out a specific rep range because the rep drop off is huge. Like you would get 6 on one set, then 2 on the next one. It's unbelievable. So the way I would say is either program a rep goal set in which you use rest pause to get to a certain number, for example 10 in this case, or you use an M-rep. So you try to get as many reps as possible on each set, not worrying about fitting in a certain rep range. So that's the second movement. I definitely recommend you include Gironda pull-ups. It's going to change the way you approach bodybuilding. So that's the second movement. Then we move on to a third one, and this one is a forgotten gem of the push-up world. So basically when people try to grow their triceps with a pushing movement, a pushing compound movement, it's either the dips or the JM press, right? Or the close grip bench. But have you ever thought about doing diamond push-ups? Like, I know that most people, when they start off with regular calisthenics and they're not strong enough, they do their diamond push-ups. And when they get strong enough that they can do more than 15, they stop doing them and they move on to close grip bench, close grip push-ups, dips, and stuff like that. But really, diamond push-ups deserve more love. And I would say they're even better than dips at what they do. Basically, the diamond push-ups are like dips in the sense that they're going to build the chest, the shoulders, and the triceps amazingly, but contrary to the dips, these ones are not going to cause any type of sternum pain. Also, you have a higher capacity to turn it into a shoulder or tricep movement compared to the dip, because with the dip, you still have that massive weighted stretch at the bottom. But with the diamond push-ups, which you could argue that because of the dip has a higher arm bend as well, it's going to stretch the triceps more, which I'm not against. But if your goal is to not feel your chest and feel more of your triceps, you definitely should be doing diamond push-ups instead. Basically, the way you want to think of the diamond push-up is not just a regular push-up, is you have to think about breaking at the shoulder, at the elbow. So instead of thinking about pushing down or letting yourself go down to then push, you want to think about breaking at the elbow. So you start off like that, you break at the elbow, you let it stretch, and then you go the way up. And this is going to be similar in terms of feeling to a JM press. And I'm not shitting you, it feels tremendous. You just have to find the correct difficulty for you. So the way you would do this is either adding weight or with just your body weight, you would elevate the feet. I have gotten so strong that I have to use my rings to support my feet, and I'm basically like this. This is the floor. I'm like this doing diamond push-ups, and they are brutal. The rep ranges I would recommend for this movement is basically 6 to 15, 8 to 15, 15 to 25, or you can even use down workouts. If you want, you can do like 30 down diamond push-up workouts, and trust me, your triceps are going to get huge. So diamond push-ups are one of the few compound movements that are actually going to completely grow your triceps like no other. Of course, you're not going to maximally develop the long head, but the triceps are going to grow as a whole pretty well. So that's the third movement, diamond push-ups. And also the way you would include it in your program is either at the end of your session, like arm session, for example, you do your diamond push-ups as a finisher, or you can use it as a secondary movement once you do your heavy horizontal pushing. So you could do, for example, including ring pike push-ups as well. You could do, for example, weighted dips, then you do your ring pike push-ups, and then you finish off with diamond push-ups, either decline or with your feet on the floor. So that's how I would approach it personally. Also, make sure to slow down the eccentric on all of these movements. I almost forgot to specify that. Then we move on to the fourth movement after a brief interruption, which is going to be not a movement in itself, but it's going to be a genre of movements, if you will, or a type of movement, which is going to be ring rear delt isolation. So that includes Y braces, face pulls, rear delt flies, and any type of variation like that. They're the best in what they do. They have a tremendous stretch on the rear delts, similar to power raises, and also they have a complete stimulus. You're going to target the traps, the rear delts, the side delts, and it's going to also promote shoulder health. Depending on how you do it, it's going to be more for shoulder health or more for hypertrophy. Again, depending on how you do it. You can pull to your eyes, you can pull to your nose, to your mouth. You can do like external rotation or just roll to your face. You have multiple styles of approaching it. And again, you can do Y races, for example, or you can do it more openly like this, or you can even just do rear delt flies. You have a lot of variation to do, which again, it's great, and they are all going to develop your shoulders like no other. I don't do lateral races like at all. I just do ring face pulls, Y races, and rear delt flies, and of course my rows and vertical presses. And they have gotten pretty big over the last few years, especially this year in which I really focused on growing the shoulders. So again, I really recommend this movement. You have a high stretch, it's very safe, and it's very comfortable to do. I find it pretty awkward to do your face pulls on a cable station because of the fucking plastic thing you use on the rope. It fucking gets on your hand. But when you do your ring face pulls, it's just comfortable on the wrist, comfortable on the hands. It's perfect, basically. Also, it has a lot of mechanical drop set potential, because think about it. You basically are doing it with just your body weight, right? You do your reps, you finish, and then you take a couple of steps back, so you get away from the anchor point, and then you keep going, and then you keep going. So that allows you to accumulate a lot of high quality tonnage and reps, effective reps, basically, in a short amount of time, which is amazing. Then we move on to the final movement, which is going to be one arm ring rows or archer rows. I'm going to put it in the same category. So basically they are inverted rows, but if they turn Super Saiyan, because they get you way more out of less weight. With just your feet on the ground, you're barely going to get like 6 or 8 repetitions, depending on the movement. I can get 10 with archer rows, but I could barely get 6 with one arm rows. So yeah, it's pretty good. You get a super insane stretch similar to T-bar rows or even croc rows. I know it sounds crazy, but it is true. You can basically have a higher biasing effect than with regular ring inverted rows, because you do one hand at a time. So you can target more of the lats, you can target more of the upper back, and you get a higher stretch because of the higher range of motion at the bottom. So you can protract, and then you can even turn a little bit to stretch the rear delts a little bit more. It has a high stimulus to fatigue ratio. It is super difficult, and you're not going to basically need any type of weights for a long time. And even if you got to the point basically that you needed to add weight, you can just elevate the feet, and trust me, you're not getting more than 4 reps. So again, really recommend this movement. Archer ring rows are way more stable, if you will, but one arm ring rows have a higher stretch. So that's a trade-off you're going to have to think about. The way I would program this is either 4 to 8 or 6 to 10, and I would do it as a secondary movement. For example, you would do your one-arm chin-ups, right? And on one day you do your one-arm chin-ups, and then you could include some type of inverted row. And then on the other session, you do, for example, Gironda pull-ups, and then you do your one-arm ring rows. I think that's the best way to include it as a secondary movement in the 4 to 8 or 6 to 10 rep range. So those are the movements for today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Tell me what you think about these movements. Have you tried them? Do you have them in your program? Are you going to include them? And as always, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.